Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands, then lower cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the US. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IPWorksWonders.
Hey everyone, just a quick heads up that this is a fast-moving news story, and some things might have changed by the time you listen. Okay, here's the show. When you take American history in high school and study Watergate, you learn about the Saturday Night Massacre.
Good evening. The country tonight is in the midst of what may be the most serious constitutional crisis in its history. The president has fired the special Watergate prosecutor.
Department of Justice officials quitting under President Nixon because they refused to fire a special counsel who was investigating Nixon.
That's Jay Willis, the editor-in-chief of the progressive legal website Balls and Strikes. The Saturday Night Massacre kicked off the constitutional crisis that ended in Nixon's resignation.
That was two people who quit.
Since Thursday, at least 7 federal prosecutors in New York and Washington have resigned in protest of the Trump administration's attempt to drop criminal charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams.
And so if we're doing like rough equivalences, we are currently at 3.5 Saturday Night Massacres, and I don't necessarily know that we've gotten to the end of these sort of cinematic resignations. So just in terms of the number of people who have looked at what they're being asked to do and said, no, not for me, we are piling them up quickly here.
On Monday, 4 top officials in the Adams administration resigned as well. Jay himself was not surprised that Eric Adams and his legal team would try to lean into Trump's transactional nature, appeal to the part of him that wants Adams to help with his immigration crackdown. But even then, it seemed like a very public quid pro quo.
The brazenness certainly is unexpected, even adjusted for cartoon villain corruption. I'm sure we'll get into it, but after this deal got announced, to have Eric Adams go on Fox and Friends with a Trump administration official and to have them basically joking around about the nature of the deal they made. It's like, well, we're not even trying to hide anything anymore.
Today on the show, will the mass resignations at the DOJ go down in the history books? Or are they just one more step toward turning the Department of Justice into President Trump's personal law firm? I'm Lizzie O'Leary, filling in for Mary Harris, and you're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. The holiday season is over, but cold weather is sticking around. Luckily, Home Chef is delivering hearty recipes and comfort foods to help you stay cozy. You know what I realized Home Chef is good for recently? A house like mine, where only one of you likes meat, and that person is a teenager. Home Chef happily sent over a big box of beef and some easy-to-prepare recipes, and while a bunch of us were digging into some vegetarian chili, my teenager was taking a break from his homework and making himself stir-fry. Easy for him, easy for me. Users of leading meal kits have rated Home Chef #1 in quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. Whether you prefer classic kits, quick recipes, oven-ready options, microwave meals, or a family menu, Home Chef has over 30 options a week and serves a variety of dietary needs. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering What Next listeners 18 free meals, plus free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box. Go to homechef.com/whatnext. That is homechef.com/whatnext for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. homechef.com/whatnext. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. This episode is brought to you by Quince. with a new year comes a new opportunity to reimagine yourself. And if you've got a little extra cash, reimagine your wardrobe. This year, resolve to refresh your look with quality pieces and stay on budget with Quince. Quince sent me an adorable shirt and a cashmere sweater, both things I would wear to the office, wear out with friends. They look great, and together they came to under $100. It's pretty impressive, considering that sweater was actual cashmere. So how do they do it? They do it by partnering directly with top factories, cutting out the cost of a middleman, and passing the savings on to you. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, and they use premium fabrics and finishes for a luxury feel in every piece. So, if you want to upgrade your closet this year without the upgraded price tag, go to quince.com/whatnext for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/whatnext to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/whatnext.
It's worth recapping the charges against Eric Adams, a Democrat and former cop. In September, he was indicted on 5 counts, including bribery, fraud, and soliciting illegal foreign campaign donations. He pleaded not guilty, and the case was set to go to trial in April. But since then, Adams has been essentially cozying up to Trump. He met with the president and his son Eric in Florida, attended the inauguration, went on Tucker Carlson's internet talk show, and urged city officials not to publicly criticize the president. Jay Willis says all this sucking up was a strategic play that seems to be paying off.
I think that if you are a person who is under investigation by the Department of Justice in some capacity or other, that there is really no cost right now to making an appeal to the Trump White House to say, look, this is kind of bullshit, right? I shouldn't be subjected to this. Danielle Sassoon, one of the 7 Department of Justice officials who quit in response to this scandal, has said as much. She said that there are defense lawyers for people who are under Department of Justice investigation who are basically lobbying her office right now, her former office, who are lobbying the White House to get the same sort of deal that got offered to Eric Adams. So I think if you're someone like Adams, you don't have a lot to lose by seeing if there's an easy way out.
I want to talk about the memo that Trump's acting Deputy Attorney General Emile Beauvais sent to prosecutors in New York telling them to drop the charges against Adams, because the language and the reasoning are pretty striking. There's this part where he says the Justice Department has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or legal theories on which the case is based. I am not a lawyer, but that strikes me as pretty unusual.
Yeah, it's almost like a professional courtesy, just like, hey, just so you know, you did great work investigating these alleged crimes. This is not about you. This is about the quid pro quo that we've struck. And it's like, I don't know if you're supposed to put that in the letter, man. And, there's the second part as well, where Beauvais' letter talks about, look, Eric Adams criticized Biden's immigration policy. And so we wonder if that factored in to the Department of Justice's decision to investigate Adams, which just like on its face seems to contradict Beauvais' assertion at first that the investigation was well-grounded and all that. But even setting that aside, Beauvais also says, like, look, Eric Adams says that he's going to enforce Trump's immigration policy. And, we have an obligation to take that into account when considering who to criminally investigate. And again, I don't think that's right. And to the extent that you're going to argue that, I don't know that you should put that in print. But yeah, the brazenness, the sort of naked corruption, I think is pretty funny to see. Like it's clarifying in a way, right? Like we don't really have to pretend anymore what's going on here.
Well, and there's also this aspect of it where some of the prosecutors who resigned said, actually, we were preparing to seek another indictment against Eric Adams. And what, is Beauvais just telling them to kind of magic that away as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting part of Sassoon's comments on this, is that, she's been saying, look, this is not just about Adams's campaign violations. This is about his active evasion of the investigative process. If you're, a federal prosecutor in this, that's almost as insulting as the original allegations of the investigation, right? As somebody not submitting to your prosecutorial authority. But yeah, having Beauvais strike a deal like this with a defendant who is basically thumbing its nose at the legal process, I can understand why they might find that annoying.
We're going to get deep into the characters involved here, but I guess I want to ask you kind of one bigger picture question, which is these resignations start happening Thursday night. They go through Friday. People in New York and Washington are resigning. But then on Friday afternoon, DOJ finds someone to sign the motion to dismiss the case, career prosecutor Ed Sullivan. Did Trump and Beauvais get what they wanted? Like, do they have a loyal DOJ now that's willing to carry out their orders?
So it seems like the resolution of this was after Beauvais had DOJ lawyer after DOJ lawyer quit rather than carry out his instructions, that he basically locked a bunch of career prosecutors in a room and said, look, one of you has to sign this. And he intimated that if they can't figure out who's going to sign it, they could all be fired. And he also intimated that anyone who signs it, like, they're going to be in line for promotions. So if you're a prosecutor, you're sort of weighing on the one hand, do you stay and do something wrong, something unethical, or do you all quit in a blaze of glory and leave, in your view, like nobody of competence left in the institution? Like nobody is around to prosecute wrongdoing going forward. Basically, the question is like, how much are you willing to compromise on one case in order to keep the rest of your cases going? And according to the New York Times, the prosecutors in the room discussed resigning en masse until this one guy, Ed Sullivan, basically agrees to take the fall.
Wow.
A little bit of backstory on him. He's apparently nearing retirement, and he had been caught up in a scandal in the mid-2000s over the prosecution of Republican Senator from Alaska, Ted Stevens. He was ultimately exonerated from wrongdoing, but some of the other lawyers with whom he worked were not. So basically the idea in the room, again, according to people who talked to the New York Times, is like, look, Ed Sullivan has been through this before. He's dealt with reputational hits. He's getting ready to retire. Like this is the least worst outcome, is to have this guy sign this.
Because he's jumping on the grenade for everyone else, or because like he doesn't care?
I think that's the right question, and I don't know the answer. Like I kind of have mixed feelings about this, right? On the one hand, if there really is someone who's nearing retirement, I understand why they might want to do their colleagues a solid. On the other hand, I don't know that it's a good thing at the end of the day to give Trump and Beauvais what they wanted, as you put it. Like, if all they had to do was get 7 Department of Justice lawyers to quit, people whose names Trump and Beauvais have already forgotten, like, who cares? Like, what was all of that for? I do kind of think the institution is only as strong as the willingness of the people who work within it to uphold its values. And it's cool that they got to 7, but the outcome is still the same.
Let's talk a little bit about the immigration part of this, because you mentioned it before, this other part in Beauvais' memo, where he basically says, look, the prosecution has meant that Mayor Adams can't devote full attention and resources to the illegal immigration and violent crime. I mean, that, again, seems like spelling out a quid pro quo pretty clearly.
I think that's right. And, if there were sort of any doubt from the legalese in these back and forth letters, Eric Adams went on Fox and Friends with Tom Homan, Trump's border czar. And I'll quote here Tom Homan. What he said is, if he, Eric Adams, if he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, again, I'm sorry, I'm quoting here, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? And then everyone on the couch, Adams and Homan, sort of laughs like they're in a bad mob movie. Like, again, they are discussing openly the implications of this, that Eric Adams gets out from under a federal investigation, and a Trump administration that needs the cooperation of public officials, Democratic public officials, right, in carrying out its xenophobic anti-immigrant policy. they get somebody in their pockets.
And shortly after that, Eric Adams says he will allow ICE agents to go to Rikers Island, where they have not been allowed before.
Yeah, I mean, he has to find a way to immediately deliver on the promise of this, of this agreement, right? And that is probably the lowest hanging fruit way for him to do so, to allow federal immigration officials access to some of the most vulnerable people whom, Trump can sort of hold up and say, look at these bad men, capital B, capital M, whom I am deporting. More Democratic officials should be acting like this.
It seems worth noting that one thing that Trump and Emile Beauvais have not done in this whole saga is offer Eric Adams a pardon. Why?
For Adams, I'm sure he would prefer a pardon. A pardon is complete, a pardon is absolute, a pardon can't be undone. But this sort of arrangement is what benefits the Trump administration the most, because it's a dismissal of the charges for now, right? Underscored by the uncomfortable conversation that we saw on Fox and Friends shortly afterwards, where if Eric Adams doesn't cooperate with the administration, or if he doesn't cooperate with them to the extent that the Trump administration demands, there's nothing to stop the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, from bringing charges back against Adams. Like, this is a reprieve for Adams for as long as he cooperates to the White House's satisfaction. But it allows them to sort of keep this hanging over his head and perhaps extract greater concessions from him going forward.
You're up early anyway.
If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City,
right.
And we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, "Where the hell is the agreement we came to?" So,
right. I want ICE to deliver. And I want ICE to deliver. We're going to deliver for the safety of the people of this city.
When we come back, what does all this mean about the direction of the Justice Department?
This episode is brought to you by Built. If you earn points on groceries, travel, and practically everything else you buy, why not consider earning points on one of the biggest monthly expenses, rent? Built changes the game by letting renters earn high-value points on rent. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points toward. Points can also be redeemed toward a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So, if you're not earning points on rent, you've got to ask yourself, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/whatnext. That's joinbilt.com/whatnext. Be sure to use joinbuilt.com/whatnext to start earning points on your rent payments today.
Save on Cox Internet when you add Cox Mobile and get fiber-powered internet at home and unbeatable 5G reliability on the go. So whether you're playing a game at home,
Yes, goal.
or attending one live, you can do more without spending more. Learn how to save at cox.com/internet. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial cable. Cox Mobile runs on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability as measured by Ookla LLC in the U.S. 2H 2023. Results may vary, not an endorsement. Other restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places. Between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I want to talk about some of the people involved here because it's pretty fascinating. We've mentioned Emile Beauvais. He's now the acting deputy attorney general. But can you talk a little bit more about what he was doing before that?
Yeah. So Beauvais is not the type of person who typically gets a leadership position in the Department of Justice under any administration, Democrat or Republican. Like, say what you want about the importance of having a prestigious resume in the legal profession, but this is just not someone with a resume who would get this job. He was a prosecutor for a while. He worked in big law. There are literally thousands of people who have that resume who are not high-ranking Department of Justice officials. He is in this position because he showed loyalty to Trump. He was quite literally Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer in at least 3 of the criminal and civil investigations into his conduct over the last 4 years. And he was rewarded with a place very high up in government.
What about Danielle Sassoon? She was, before she quit, the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. She seems like she has impeccable conservative credentials.
Yeah, so Sassoon is a career prosecutor. She's been at this for about a decade, and she is the person who got elevated to this U.S. attorney position, this temporary U.S. attorney position, after Trump took office, basically until the Senate can confirm Trump's permanent replacement. And as you say, she has pretty standard conservative Republican credentials. She, clerked for, I believe, J. Harvey Wilkinson, a conservative judge on the Fourth Circuit, and then for Justice Antonin Scalia. So this is not a resistance hero, right? This is a career prosecutor, a conservative Republican, and that's true of at least one other of the 7 DOJ lawyers who quit, right? Hagen Scotton, I think is how you say his name. He was a Kavanaugh clerk and then a John Roberts clerk. And he suggested in his resignation letter, which I'm sure we'll discuss, that, he's not, he doesn't have antipathy towards the Trump administration. He expresses sympathy for the idea of a businessman president making deals. Again, these are not Democrats falling on the sword rather than comply with Trump's order. In some cases, these are pretty conservative Republicans who are leaving these posts.
I guess I wonder, what to make of that. There's already a piece, I believe, in the New Yorker headline, Danielle Sassoon's American Bravery. Are these people, throwing their bodies in front of a train of injustice, or what exactly is happening here?
Yeah, I'm much more skeptical of the notion that, these are the resistance heroes to which we should look for courage and guidance. On the one hand, I do think it's good when people quit their jobs rather than do something illegal or unethical. On the other hand, I don't want to put too much stock in what amounts to, for people who aren't in elite legal circles, Department of Justice palace intrigue. All of these people who left their job are going to walk into corner offices at white shoe law firms of their choice after this. During the first Trump administration, you may remember there was another mini episode like this one. Sally Yates, the acting attorney general holdover from the Obama administration, she refused to implement the Muslim ban and got fired for it. She became a professor at Georgetown Law. She is currently a government investigations partner at a law firm in Atlanta. What I'm saying is, again, these people are going to be fine. When, taking a step back, when confronted with someone like Trump, I think there's a tendency to, look for leaders for the fight ahead, wherever they can be found. And I just don't think it's these folks. Undoing the damage Trump has done, that's going to require, the work of organizing, the work of democracy, of changing hearts and minds, of activating voters. That's not going to come from well-compensated lawyers shuffling prestigious jobs. So, shout out to these lawyers for doing what they were supposed to do, which is not do illegal or unethical things. Enjoy making $6 million a year at Paul Weiss.
But then what do you make of the barn burner part of Scotton's resignation letter, where he says any federal prosecutor would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials. And then the fun part where he says, if no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me. What do you do with that?
Just as a matter of writing, I have to tip my cap. That's cool. Like, I got to hand it to him. He really got to quit a job in public with a couldn't be me sign off. I do think that, that portends a grim future for the Department of Justice where, the lawyers who are leaving now are people whose resumes indicate that, they are not necessarily skeptical of the Trump administration. They are not hostile to the conservative legal movement's efforts to implement its preferred policy agenda. So to the extent that, what Trump did here is bad enough to make a former John Roberts clerk this angry, that is not a great sign about where we're headed.
What does the Justice Department then start to look like?
So if you look back at Trump's attorney generals, I think a fair characterization is they have gotten increasingly loyalist to Trump. So his first one was Jeff Sessions. I would say he was basically the highest profile lawyer with attorney general aspirations who backed Trump in 2016. And getting this cabinet position was basically his reward for that foresight, I guess. The man who replaced Sessions, Bill Barr, he had a reputation, having worked as an attorney general in previous administrations, but he also auditioned for the job of Trump attorney general. Famously, he wrote an unsolicited memo that just criticized the Department of Justice for the way that the Mueller investigation unfolded. Just like, a classic normal guy thing to do is to crank out 20 pages with your opinions about why an ongoing investigation at the place you used to work is wrong. But that memo got to Trump's desk, right? And Barr got rewarded with the attorney general job. And I think the confirmation of Pam Bondi just continues that trend. She has been loyal to Trump throughout her political career and throughout his. So returning to our discussion of a lawyer like Hagen Scotton, it's good that lawyers are leaving in lieu of doing something illegal or unethical. But the effect of this going forward is that the Department of Justice and more generally the lawyers in Trump's orbit, increasingly these people are the dregs of the profession, people who understand the law primarily as a tool they can use to empower Trump and intend to use it that way.
With the Eric Adams case, the judge in this case, Dale Ho, has to approve the dismissal of the case. There is a chance that he could say no. That seems like it would be pretty unprecedented again. Is that likely to happen? Is that even a possibility?
It's certainly a possibility. I don't know how likely it is. I think the legal standard is, if there's a dismissal like this, the presiding judge has to approve it as, in the interest of justice or something to that effect. I would say I'm a little bit concerned about, what could happen if Judge Ho declines to dismiss the case or, even expresses skepticism about it. There's a lot of chatter right now, as to what point are we in a constitutional crisis. And I do think that a fair entrant for that list of possibilities would be, a conflict between a federal trial judge and the Department of Justice as to whether or not DOJ is going to continue to prosecute a case that a trial court judge, declines to dismiss. Even if Judge Ho eventually tries to, keep the Department of Justice on this case, that is not going to undo the resignations of the prosecutors who left already. That is not going to do anything to restore the reputation of the Department of Justice that has taken a hit here. There is damage to the system that has already been done here. And I don't know that the ultimate disposition of this effort to dismiss the case is going to resolve that.
Jay Willis, thank you so much for coming on and for talking with me.
Hey, thanks for having me as always. Really appreciate it.
Jay Willis is the editor-in-chief of Balls and Strikes. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, and Ethan Oberman. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Lizzie O'Leary, filling in for Mary Harris. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm at Lizzie O'Reilly. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon.